Hey guys, this is Titan and I welcome you to another episode of my Cities Skylines series in Vedastein. Quite unbelievable, the second run in a row, which is unremarkable for me, I know. Nevertheless, I'd like to continue this episode in the same area we ended the last episode. So the topic of the last episode was the station of Schelchwitz together with, sort of the new part of the village. In today's episode, I'd like to concentrate on the old part of the village, meaning the actual historic part of the village. So what I have in mind is sort of a small village stretched alongside this river formed by these two smaller creeks. I want to sort of have some sort of promenade along this river here, as well as the main river, the Veda, so that we have a sort of interesting entrance to the whole city, to the whole village part, for visitors coming by ferry. And then maybe we can have a sort of market square, a small one, or a village core here at the back, and sort of towering above all what is now this vanilla castle ruin, I'd like to be some hotel thing. I have an asset in mind for that might fit very well as a hotel castle atop this hill. So probably something along the lines of the castle that used to be there, fell in ruins, pretty much as that one, and then in the 19th century was turned into a fancy castle-like hotel. So that's the topic for today, and similar to the last episode, a large part of the recorded time-lapse part got removed, or in this case, like the first bit of it. So following this little introduction will be 4 clips showing the progression or the progress I made that's lost in terms of time-lapse footage, and then I will catch you in a few minutes, or a few seconds actually, to talk about what you missed, to explain some things, and then we will continue the rest of the episode together in a classic time-lapse and commentary fashion. So I will catch you in a few seconds. So this is where we are right now, with sort of the foundations of the historic part of the village laid down. You also see here at the ferry pier and on the banks of the river, I already started at just a little bit of actual detailing, but for the most part it's really just like the foundations of the whole village that we will more or less together develop through the next 20-25 minutes in, classic commented time-lapse style. Just a few things I'd like to mention here. As I said previously, the whole village sort of stretches along this small river, or this small creek, with the main square, or the historic village center being here where these two creeks meet. Here I also plopped down this small mill, for which I used 2 of my Umgebindehäuser, again for lack of a proper English term, and hidden in those is the mill building from Sven Berlin. It's actually quite decent looking building, just didn't really fit the style I was going for here, so I hid it among these other two buildings just to get the rotating water wheel, which I think turned out pretty great. Then I just added a few of these waterfall props from Ryuchi to get that slight bit of actual, working water wheel effect. And I also placed a pool steam spawner somewhere here that generates a bit of, just a bit of foam flying around. Another thing, tiny thing I'd like to mention here is the hotel complex I made here that consists of two apartment buildings from Lord Bruni that I slapped just some hotel logo on, basically to tell, look, this is a hotel, not an apartment complex. And since I needed the main entrance for this hotel, what I used is this cafe building from, I think, Acapulco, or maybe back to Baroque. This cafe building, edited it slightly with PO and changed the roof color to have a sort of main entrance to the hotel, and I think it's a sort of believable hotel building. With that said, right now, I would say you are up to date with what I developed sort of off camera, accidentally or not. And so without much more talking, let's just straight move on to the time-lapse part of the episode. So I will catch you in just a few seconds. And so we directly start with the time-lapse part of this episode. Now, what I'm doing here is basically the direct continuation of where I left you just a few seconds ago. So the idea behind what I'm doing here is that there is sort of this modern addition beneath the historic buildings that has some, as you see, some cafes or some souvenir shops. So in general, shops or facilities that serve the tourists that come through this promenade. Now, this promenade in reality is quite heavily used actually, as it's really the main path to get from the ferry and through that basically from the outside world to the hiking trails and the landscape and everything that is behind this village. And I try sort of to emulate this here as well, with the promenade being, or promenade, I'm not sure to be honest, the promenade being a really wide street with some fancy lanterns and some flags next to it, and pretty much lined by all these beautiful, cute, not too fancy but still interesting and beautiful half-timbered houses. In addition, with, as you can see to the left, also some 19th century buildings that are a bit bigger and more stately. And that is sort of the theme of the part we are doing here right now. At the back of these houses, as you see me doing right now, is sort of the transition into the hill that lies pretty much all around this valley. As you already saw at the beginning of this episode, and also in the first of these progression shots I just showed you, is that the area we are doing now really is in this quite narrow valley. So all the buildings I'm building here and I'm detailing here, all of them are situated between the creek and sort of the rather steep mountainside that is next to it. And I really tried to incorporate that mountainside into the build. And in that case here, I did that by just using some retaining walls in a similar fashion that I also did it in Vedastein itself so long ago already, with some terraces that can then be used by just the people living there to have some sitting areas for barbecues. Maybe some have little gardens on these terraces, and some just have washing lines on these terraces. which is quite a, I think, realistic way to work with these very steep terrain elevations, at least in the whole area that is the role model for the region around Vedastein. This gets done quite often as well. And after these terraces, I just placed loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of forests, as this whole area really is in a foresty region. Now, yes, this is a sort of touristic road area, so there would be a lot of tourists coming along. Still, it is a village, and in that sense, next to the roads there aren't necessarily big houses wall to wall next to each other, but as you see it right here, small houses with fences, and behind these fences are just their private gardens. So even though this is a touristy area, you can still see it's a village. So what I'm doing now is quite important, I think, because I found a very interesting way to use the terraforming networks from Ronnie in combination with Node Controller. And that is, if you use the embankment value Node Controller offers for these terrain terraforming networks, you can do some very interesting slope work that I'm now adding up on with some of the rocks I already used 3 or 2 episodes ago to give a bit more of three-dimensionality. So to bring the third dimension onto these cliffs right there, instead of only having the theme texture, which in my opinion, in between all these trees and bushes, really pops out much more. So we are now pretty much done with the area for, well, at least the part of this area I want to show you in a time lapse, since I sort of rearranged the order of the whole time lapse footage, and rather than, or as opposed to usually where I just show you the time lapse footage chronologically, this time I do it by theme. In that sense, we are done with that area, and now here is just a very simple overview of what we did so far. What you see is that I really did not include the whole process in the time-lapse part, which is just due to the fact that you saw me detailing backyards and you saw me detailing restaurant areas and stuff so often that I really think it's not necessary anymore to show it for every single building, which is why in this episode I actually cut out pretty much everything that belongs to that. Moving on now, what I'm doing now is adding up to the village core, as I already mentioned at the beginning of the episode. Here where these two creeks meet, there is sort of the historic core of the village. In that sense, the houses here are closer together, or the sort of half-timbered houses, the historic houses, are much closer together than they are in other parts of this build. And of course there is also the church here, which I just built. Here again I'm using sort of terraces to work with the terrain elevations, though this time I used some networks. Again, Node Controller is super helpful in that case here, making it possible to give a very smooth transition of this key network by using Node Controller to make it much narrower. I can definitely recommend that mod. It is so helpful that Node Controller pretty much enables what procedural objects, what PO enabled for props and buildings, meaning to really force props or buildings into the shape we want with Node Controller. Now that is also possible for networks. Almost possible. There are some limitations still, but nevertheless the options that got added on through Node Controller are actually they are close to endless. Now here we are at the sort of market square-ish thing, or the central square, the village square of this build, and it really is just a large square with not much else to it. The church of the village is a bit elevated, just to, yeah, historically I sort of assume this would have been done in terms of flood protection. So the church is a bit elevated from these two creeks, since the area can get quite floody in some years, and so it just makes sense to place the church on a small hill to protect it from that. I just made a rather small terrace around the church, so it's quite plausible that this terrace would, like, in the past, it might have been the cemetery that is, or that used to be on the terrace, though many church cemeteries got got reformed into other uses. And in that sense, it's just a terrace around the church that maybe these days holds some church festivals, or it's just a interesting location for to get a nice view of the village. Again, working with terrain elevations here, and as I already said a few seconds ago, or a few minutes ago, here I'm just using some segments, some wall networks together with ploppable grass segments, grass pieces that I squeezed into the shape I need them through procedural objects. Later on, I also added gardens and terraces, tables, umbrellas, grills onto it, though again I cut all of that out of this episode to really focus on the things that are important for this episode or for this area. As I already mentioned, it's not necessary anymore to show every backyard detailing. It's really not necessary anymore. I used quite a lot of garages in this build, which I think I will do more and more and more in the near future, because it definitely adds quite a lot of, it definitely adds a very, like, it adds to the level of realism for these buildings. Then again, the surrounding areas are just, again, plastered with trees, and as you see here, first of all, I really love how this center of the village turned out. The backyards are just detailed in the normal fashion, but nevertheless I am very, very pleased with how that area turned out. Also, these mid-episode cinematics are something new I'm trying out, to just give a bit of an overview of what I did so far. Moving on to the next topic for this episode, and that is, as I already said at the beginning, is this castle hotel I want here on the hill above this whole village and above the river. So I used this, I think it's from Finland, that building. I'm not sure, to be honest. I used this, I think, quite old asset, because in my opinion it definitely fits into the position here. It is not really in the absolutely best quality, but I think that is totally fine given the location and given that it's not necessary to view it up close all the time. So all in all, it's still a great asset. So what I'm adding to that hotel is just this large terrace around it. So you could imagine that the round tower that is there to the right, also you see again node controller is super helpful with the together with the terraforming tool. So the round sort of terrace part you see to the right there maybe used to be the foundation of the large tower of that castle, of that medieval castle that used to be here. Though the castle got derelict through the centuries and in the end was demolished, and in the 19th century some rich businessmen decided to build a hotel here, which I think is quite a realistic scenario. So we have that white hotel building that sort of emulates a bit of a castle design on top of the old castle foundations that now are just a terrace. Again, I'm copying some of the work formations Greyflame imported into the game, and that I also used a few I think 3 episodes ago, to again add a bit of detail to the whole cliff sides and slopes in this build. And I really think that adding these rocks there, be it hidden by trees or not, and now especially with the changed color, so they blend in even more, I think they really add a spicy bit of detail that makes the whole area seem much more realistic. Now the sort of the remaining part of the castle hotel build here are just some tables and umbrellas and stuff, outside seating areas. And I myself could totally imagine sitting on some of these chairs there, having a piece of cake, coffee, or if it's later in the day, a good plate with goulash and knedelig, and just enjoy the view of the river, the sun setting in the east. It must be wonderful. Here I'm just using some block services to try to bring some life into the hotel again. And overall, you see it now, I think it definitely turned out well. And you can see the rocks I added there really give in my opinion, a spicy, interesting bit of detail that really pops out and makes it look so much more realistic as opposed to just the theme texture. As good as it looks, being the theme texture for rocks, but in my opinion, adding these 3-dimensional rocks adds so much more realism. Last part for the episode is the road that stretches along the main river, the Veda. In reality, this road is this road has a few hotels, and again I tried to emulate that look by adding some hotel buildings as well, though that was quite a bit more difficult than it should have been, simply because of the fact that there really aren't any fitting hotel assets on the workshop, sadly. So what I did is using for once this hotel building. It was made by Thomas 13TO, I think that's the right name, or is it Thomas TO 13? There you go. Anyway, I think you know who I'm talking of. And then the hotel I already showed at the beginning of the episode, and I will show again in just a few seconds, which is made from apartment complexes. So I had to be a bit imaginative here and work with not quite the most perfect assets available, but nevertheless I think I quite like how the whole stretch turned out. So now, as I already said, here's the second large hotel. Since again this is quite a touristy area, so naturally there are also a few hotels here that attract these tourists. And for this hotel I chose that at the backyard of it, or at the back side of it, I wanted to have a big area with a pool, sun chairs. So this hotel would be really a bit more of a expensive, fancy hotel. And with all that being said, actually we are at the end of the episode. I pretty much showed you everything I had to show you, and I really hope you like this whole village and the tiny details from the castle-ish hotel to these hotel complexes to the village square and the church. With all that being said, again, I thank you for watching this episode. I really hope you like it, and if you liked it, like it on YouTube, and definitely add your comments if you have anything to say about the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you really want to keep up with the series, and you can join my Discord server. There you can talk to me directly or others that follow my works, and of course there is a link to my Patreon in the description as well if you really want to support me. And of course, again, as always, the biggest of all thanks to all those who already support me on Patreon. You are amazing. That's it from my side. I hope you liked this episode. Until the next time, see you next week. Have a great time. Stay healthy, stay tuned, and I'll see you then. Bye.